Hey guys, it's me, Bridget, back with another video. Today we are finally going to do chapter 5 of the Women Who Run with Wolves book. I know it's been a really long time since we did chapter 4 and I've put so many videos in between the book, but we're finally back. Excited to sit down and do it with y'all. To be honest, this one, it hit me really personally. I've told you guys before that it feels like when I started doing these videos for YouTube, it's like I was already reading the book, but as I put the chapters out, it feels like whenever I put a chapter out, it's literally the exact thing that I'm going through in my real life, and makes it kind of personal, hit a little close to home. You know, it's just personal, you know, it's just emotional. So yeah. I don't know if you guys saw my video about how to deal with your on and off again relationship, but that video was pretty inspired by this chapter because it just all fit together. So if you want to check out that video, I leave a card right up there so you guys can see that. Before we get into the video, make sure that you subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when I come out with more videos. Go ahead and like this video because you know it's gonna be good, so you know, you might as well like it. So chapter 5, Hunting When the Heart is a Lonely Hunter. The story is the skeleton woman and facing the life-death-life nature of love. As we know, Estes talks about the life-death-life cycle a lot through this book. That cycle is basically the ancient patterns of the world that we go through throughout life, the development, decline, death, and rebirth, and then back around again of everything that we go through in life. As this book is related to wolves, Estes talks a lot about how like wolves and just animals in general go through these cycles, and they go through them like intuitively, and they don't condemn the cycles or as negative or as punitive cycles or as punishments. They don't feel the need to fight it, they just go on through it. The book says, unlike humans, wolves do not deem the ups and downs of life, energy, power, food, nor opportunity as startling or punitive. The peaks and valleys just are, and the wolves ride them as efficiently, as fluidly as possible. The instinctual nature has a miraculous ability to live through all positive boon and all negative consequence, and still maintain relationship to self and to others. Among wolves, the cycles of nature and fate are met with grace and wit, and the endurance to stay tight with one's mate and to live long as well as can be. But in order for humans to live and give loyalty in this most fit manner, in this way, which is most wise, most preserving, and most feeling, one has to go up against the thing that one fears the very most. There's no way around it. As we shall see, one must sleep with Lady Death. Notice how she says sleep with, not even just acknowledge or talk to or deal with, sleep with. We'll talk more about that a little later. As humans, we've built an intrinsic fear of the cycles that naturally, as mammals and as beings on this earth, we have to go through. Wolves are able to go through these things with wit and grace, and in order to embrace our wild side, we have to be able to embrace the way that they do things. In the last chapter, we talked about how a mate can join with another, and the question that one must ask to know the heart of your mate. We said that basically the question is, what does your heart desire? In this chapter, we'll basically be talking about what happens when the answer to that question is not what we were expecting. Maybe a little bit ugly, maybe a little bit undesirable. In the book it says, love does not mean a flirtation or pursuit of simple ego pleasures, but a visible bond composed of psychic sinew, of endurance, a union which prevails through bounty and austerity, through the most complicated and most simple days and nights. In wise stories, love is seldom a romantic tryst between two lovers. For instance, some stories in the circumpolar regions describe love as a union of two beings whose strength together enables one or both to enter into communication with the soul world and to participate in fate as a dance with life and death. The union of two beings is seen as Angakok magic itself, as a relationship through which the powers that be become known to both individuals. The only requirement of a union between two partners that may actually last and be fulfilling to both people is the full embrace of Lady Death, or as she's called in this chapter, the Skeleton Woman. So this is the story. She had done something of which her father disapproved, although no one any longer remembered what it was. But her father had dragged her to the cliffs and thrown her over and into the sea. There, the fish ate her flesh away and plucked out her eyes. As she lay under the sea, her skeleton turned over and over in the currents. One day, a fisherman came fishing. Well, in truth, many had come to this bay once, but this fisherman had drifted far from his home place and did not know that the local fishermen stayed away, saying that this inlet was haunted. The fisherman's hook drifted down through the water and caught, of all places, in the bones of the skeleton woman's rib cage. The fisherman thought, "Oh, now I've really got a big one. Now I really have one." In his mind, he was thinking of how many people this great fish would feed, how long it would last, how long he might be free from the chore of hunting. And as he struggled with the great weight on the end of his hook, the sea was stirred to thrashing froth, and his kayak bucked and shook. For she who was beneath struggled to disentangle herself. And the more she struggled, the more she tangled in the line. No matter what she did, she was inexorably dragged upwards, tugged by the bones of her own ribs. The hunter had turned to scoop up his net, so he did not see her bald head rise above the waves. He did not see the little coral creatures glinting in the orbs of her skull. He did not see the crustaceans in her old ivory teeth. When he turned back with his net, her entire body, such as it was, had come to the surface and was hanging from the tip of his kayak by her long front teeth. "Ah!" cried the man, and his heart fell into his knees. His eyes hid in terror on the back of his head, and his ears blazed bright red. "Ah!" he screamed, and knocked her off with the prow of his oar, and began paddling like a demon toward shoreline. And not realizing she was tangled up in his line, he was frightened all the more, for she appeared to stand upon her toes while chasing him all the way to shore. No matter which way he zigged his kayak, she stayed right behind, and her breath rolled over the water in clouds of steam, and her arms flailed out as though to snatch down him into the depths. "Ah!" he wailed as he ran aground. In one leap, he was out of his kayak, clutching his fishing stick and running, and the white coral corpse of the skeleton woman, still snagged in the fishing line, bumpity-bumped right behind him. Over the rocks he ran, and she followed. Over the frozen tundra he ran, and she kept right up. Over the meat laid out to dry he ran, cracking it to pieces in his mukluks, boring down. Throughout it all, she kept right up. In fact, grabbed some of the frozen fish as she was dragged behind. Then she began to eat, for she had not gorged in a long, long time. Finally, the man reached his snow house and dove right into the tunnel, and on his hands and knees scrambled into the interior. Panting and sobbing, he lay there in the dark, his heart a drum, a mighty drum. Safe at last, oh so safe, yes, safe at last. Imagine when he lit his whale oil lamp, and there it, lay in a tumble upon his snow floor, one heel over her shoulder, one knee inside her rib cage, one foot over her elbow. He could not say later what it was. Perhaps the firelight softened her features, or the fact that he was a lonely man. But a feeling of some kindness came into his breathing, and slowly He reached out his grimy hands and, using words soft like a mother to a child, began to untangle her from the fishing line. Na 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 na. First, he untangled the toes and then the ankles. Na na na. On and on, he worked into the night, until, dressing her in furs to keep her warm, Skeleton Woman's bones were all in the order a human's should be. He felt into his leather cuffs for his flint, and used some of his hair to light a little more fire. He gazed at her from time to time as he oiled the precious wood of his fishing stick and rewound the gut line. And she in the furs uttered not a word. She did not dare, lest this hunter take her out and throw her down to the rocks and break her bones to pieces utterly. The man became drowsy, slid under his sleeping skins, and soon was dreaming. And sometimes, as humans sleep, you know, a tear escapes from the dreamer's eye. We never know what sort of dream causes this, but we know it is either a dream of sadness or longing, and this is what happened to the man. The Skeleton Woman saw the tear glisten in the firelight, and suddenly she became so thirsty. She tinkled and clanked and crawled over to the man and put her mouth to his tear. The single tear was like a river, and she drank and drank and drank until her many years-long thirst was slackened. Then, while lying beside him, she reached inside the sleeping man and took out his heart, the mighty drum. She sat up and banged on both sides of it. Boom, 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 boom. As she drummed, she began to sing out, flesh, flesh, flesh. Flesh, flesh, flesh. And the more she sang, the more her body filled out with flesh. She sang for hair and good eyes and nice fat hands. She sang the divide between her legs and breasts long enough to wrap for warmth. All the things a woman needs. And when she was done, she also sang the sleeping man's clothes off and crept into his bed with him, skin against skin. She returned the great drum, his heart, to his body, and this is how they awakened, wrapped one around the other, tangled from their night together in another way now, a good and lasting way. The people who cannot remember how she came to her first ill fortune say she and the fisherman went away and were consistently well fed by the creatures she had known in her life underwater. The people say that it is true, and that is all they know. So basically the story of the Skeleton Woman talks about the phases of love and how to have true love. This is kind of a deeper look at what that means. The first phase of love is the accidental finding of treasure. It's the state that all lovers begin in. It's the part where the fisherman is going to find his fish and he catches onto a fish and then he's bringing it up and he's thinking, oh, this is gonna make my life so much better, this is gonna do so much for me, all this stuff or whatever. Everyone goes into love thinking that. Everyone goes into love having this ideal that it's gonna be so beautiful and it's gonna change their lives. And not that that's not true, we're just basically blissfully naive in this state, and there's no way to know that we don't know what's coming. In the book it says, humans who don't know any better have the proclivity to approach love the same way the fisherman in the story approaches the hunt. I hope I get a big one that will feed me for a long time to come, one that will excite me, make my life easier, one that I can brag about to all other hunters back home. This is the natural progression of the naive or famished hunter. The very young, the uninitiated, the hungry, and the wounded all have values that revolve around the finding and winning of treasures and trophies. The very young truly do not know what they're seeking yet. The hungry seek sustenance, and the wounded seek a consolation prize for their previous losses. Yet, all will have treasure happen upon them. People don't know what they're going after. They're searching for a big fish, and most likely they're not gonna get the fish that they think they're gonna get. They're gonna end up with the Skeleton Woman. But the thing about it is that the Skeleton Woman is actually the biggest trophy of all. It just takes some time to uncover and understand that it's a trophy. This is the unavoidable trophy that all of us will receive within finding love, regardless of if you receive it over and over and over again in your life or just the one time. Every time you fall in love, you will receive the skeleton woman. It's the trophy that you will get. Our psyches don't let us avoid her. In the book, it says, while those who are initiated are unafraid of Lady Death, the culture often encourages that we throw the skeleton woman over the cliffs. For not only is she fearsome, it takes too long to learn her ways. A soulless world encourages faster, quicker thrashing about to find the one filament that seems to be the one, that will burn forever and right now. However, the miracle we're seeking actually takes time. Time to find it and time to bring it to life. In the story, the fact that the skeleton woman is buried underground is representative of the buried life-death-life nature, the unused life-death-life cycles that most women have in our society. She is the governor of our intuitive and our emotive abilities. She has the order to complete the life cycles. In the story, she's lifted up by acts of love, and she's not easily pushed back down. She's attached. She can't go back down. Women and men seek to avoid her, but it's impossible. In the book it says, for the naive and wounded, the miracle of the psyche's ways is that even if you are half-hearted, irreverent, didn't mean to, didn't really hope to, don't want to, feel unworthy to, aren't ready for it, you will accidentally stumble upon treasure anyways. Then it is your soul's work to not overlook what has been brought up, to recognize treasure as treasure, no matter how unusual its form, and to consider carefully what to do next. So we can't avoid the treasure. It's gonna come no matter what. And even if we're searching for the perfect one or the thing that we think will work out easily as possible, and we're not looking for the difficulties and we don't feel worthy of the true love, no matter what, we're still gonna get it. And we're still gonna get the skeleton woman. To refuse this skeleton woman, to refuse Lady Death, is not to avoid her at all. It's simply to throw a cover over her, to try and run away from her. She'll continue to come. She will only be able to bring life into our lives once we're able to accept her. As long as we continue to kill her, we will kill the potential of genuine and real love. In the book it says, throwing this mysterious nature over the cliff always causes the woman lover and the soulful force in men to become a skeleton, bereft of true, genuine love or nourishment. As a woman often takes keen notice of biological and emotional cycles, the life-death-life cycles are at the center of her concern. Since there can be little new life without decline in that which has gone on previously, lovers who insist on attempting to keep everything at a psyche scintillating peak will spend their days in an increasingly ossified relationship. The desire to force love to live on in its most positive form only is what causes love ultimately to fall over dead and for good. Relationships that never fight don't last. If there's never any issues, it's not real. There's always some level of having to kill off parts of the past in order to move forward. And as long as we want to stay in the exact same thing, it will never move forward and it will never be genuine, because it will move forward in the same state, but it will cease to be able to nourish us. In most stories of modern day and most fairy tales, when the ugly, scary monster is brought up to shore, it's usually slain or thrown back, or even grants a wish and then decides to go back into the ocean. In this story, it's quite different, and this is more realistic because Lady Death is not going anywhere. In the book it says, Lady Death is not letting go. Lady Death is not graciously granting any wishes. She surfaces, and like it or not, for without her, there can be no real knowledge of life, and without that knowing, there can be no fealty, no real love, and or devotion. Love costs. It costs bravery. It costs going the distance, as we shall see. The duty of the woman, the wild woman, or the soulful man is to bring up Lady Death and to sleep with the skeleton woman. To love means to stay with. It means to emerge from a fantasy world into a world where sustainable love is possible. Face to face, bones to bones, a love of devotion. To love means to stay when every cell says run. When lovers are able to tolerate the life-death-life nature, when they are able to understand it as a continuum, as a night between 2 days, and as the force that creates a love that endures a lifetime, they are able to face the skeleton woman in the relationship. Then together, they are strengthened, and both are called to a deeper understanding of the two worlds they live in. One, the mundane world, and the other, the world of spirit. In the first phase of love, the accidental finding of treasure, we realize that we're all searching for love, and we're all probably searching for something that isn't exactly what we're going to find. But we will find treasure regardless. The key is to hold on to being genuine and to allow the cycles of life to happen within the treasure that we find. The second phase of love is the chasing and the hiding. Once presented with the skeleton woman, our human instinct is to run. It's to run and hide and to get away from it, to pretend it's not there, all of that. We all go through that for a phase of the love cycle. It's completely normal. We attempt to shut it up, to make it pretty, to pretend that nothing is happening at all. In the book, though, it says, some make the mistake of thinking that they're running away from a relationship with the lover. They are not. They are running away from love or the pressures of the relationship. They are trying to outrun the mysterious life-death-life force. Psychology diagnoses this as fear of intimacy or fear of commitment. But those are only symptoms. The deeper issue is one of misbelief and distrust. Those who run away forever fear to truly live according to the cycles of the wild and integral nature. The skeleton woman comes specifically to give us a view of life in a way that we've never seen it before, to give us what we want. But in order to do that, there can only be so much. So there has to be a little bit of death in order to get life. The book says, there's a saying that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. This means the interior teacher surfaces when the soul, not the ego, is ready. This teacher comes whenever the soul calls, and thank goodness, for the ego is never fully ready. If it were solely up to the ego's readiness to draw this teacher to us, we would remain essentially teacherless for life. We are blessed since the soul continues transmitting its desire regardless of the ever-changing opinions of our egos. People fear that when things become tangled and frightened in love relationships, that the end is near. But this is not so. Because this is an archetypal matter, and because the skeleton woman does the work of fate, the hero is supposed to take off across the horizon. The death woman is supposed to come right along behind. The lover in training is supposed to dive into his little hut and gasp and choke and hope he is safe. And the skeleton woman is supposed to follow him right into his safe haven. He is supposed to untangle her, and so forth. There's a big difference between taking space and taking a break. There's a big difference between needing renewal of your soul and running from the skeleton woman. You cannot run from the skeleton woman, but you can take periods for a break. It's natural to need solitude and to need to recuperate and to need to figure it out. Because the skeleton woman is scary and Lady Death is scary. It's hard to deal with, and it's natural for us to want to run from it. Accepting this task of the skeleton woman, though, is unavoidable. You can continue to run your entire life, but no matter what, you will still be faced with the skeleton woman every single time. And you will not move forward in love until you pass her test. The third part of the phases of love are untangling the skeleton. I find this part the most fascinating and the most touching, because if you really think about it from like a logistic level, there's over 200 bones in the human body. There's a heck of a lot of them, and when you're a kid there's even more, but then they like melt into each other, and that's a whole nother story. But as an adult human, there's about 206 bones in your body. In the story, the fisherman takes the time to untangle all 200 of the bones of the skeleton woman. He untangles them and puts them back together. After being completely petrified by her chasing him to shore, literally, this monster creature that scares the shit out of him chases him to shore, and then some glimmer of hope in her eyes or some feeling of compassion in his heart pushes him to then untangle all of her bones, to see the life-death-life cycle within her, and to take the time to simply reach out and understand how to love her. Deep shit. The book says, if it is love we are making, even though we are apprehensive or frightened, we are willing to untangle the bones of the death nature. We are willing to see how it goes all together. We are willing to touch the not beautiful in another and in ourselves. Behind this challenge is the cunning test of the self. It is found even more clearly in tales where the beautiful appears ugly in order to test someone's character. In life, to embrace that which is ugly and which may be unpleasant to the eye, in the end, if we embrace it with true love and truth, we are always rewarded with righteousness. What is the not beautiful? Our own secret hunger to be loved is not beautiful. Our disuse and misuse of love is not beautiful. Our dereliction in loyalty and devotion is unlovely. Our sense of soul separateness is homely. Our psychological warts, inadequacies, misunderstandings, and infantile fantasies are the not beautiful. Additionally, the life-death-life nature which births, destroys, incubates, and births again is considered by our culture the not beautiful. However, in order to love, we must accept all of these things. And once we do, we find true righteousness and true love. But it's not enough just to see the bones. It's not even enough to bring them home with you. The key is to actually understand the bones, to understand their functions, to see and feel how they connect to each other. It requires courage, endurance, and patience. It requires time. It requires discussion. It's not a pretty or organized process, and it can feel very convoluted, but it's necessary. In the story, the fisherman had to literally untangle 200 bones, figure out how they fit into their sockets, put the joints back in the right place, and rearrange them so that they actually worked. That takes a lot of effort, and the ego does not want to do that. The ego wants to leave it as it is and then call it pretty. In the book it says, the ego fears that if we admit the life-death-life nature into our lives, we will never be happy again. Have we been so very happy along, though? No. But the undeveloped ego is very simple, like an unsocialized child, and not particularly a happy-go-lucky child either. Rather, more like a child who is watching all the time to see which slice is the biggest, which bed is the softest, and which lover is the most handsome. 3 things differentiate living from the soul versus living from the ego only. They are the ability to sense and learn new ways, the tenacity to ride a rough road, and the patience to learn deep love over time. The ego, however, has a penchant and proclivity to avoid learning. Patience is not the ego's strong suit. Enduring in relationships is not the raven's forte. So, it is not from the ever-changing ego that we love each other, but rather from the wild soul. A person who has untangled skeleton woman knows patience, knows better how to wait. He is not shocked or afraid of sparseness. He is not overwhelmed by fruition. His needs to attain, to have right now, are transformed into a finer craft of facing all facets of the relationship, observing how cycles of relationships work together. He's not afraid to relate to the beauty of fierceness and the beauty of the unknown, the beauty of the not beautiful. And in learning and working in all these things, he becomes the quintessential wild lover. How does a man learn these things? How does anyone learn them? They have to enter into direct dialogue with the life-death-life nature by listening to the inner voice that is not the ego. Learn by asking the life-death-life nature direct questions about love and loving, and then listen to her answers. Through all, we learn to not be misled by the nagging voice that is in the back of the mind that says, "This is silly, I'm just making all this up." We learn to ignore the voice and listen to what is heard beyond that. We learn to follow what we hear, all those things that bring us closer to acute awareness, the love of devotion, and the clear view of the soul. This task is never ending, and it should be repeated over time and continuously and consistently. The questions that must be asked are, what must I give death today in order to generate more life? What do I know should die, but I'm hesitant to do so? What must die in me in order for me to love? What not beauty do I fear? Of what use is the power of the not beautiful to me today? What should die today? What should live? What life am I afraid to give birth to? If not now, when? These questions are like the light of the consciousness, which keep us aware of what we're doing and how we're doing it. Those with the ability to continuously and consistently ask these questions are rewarded with the true wild woman and true love, true wild love. So the fourth step in the phases of love is the sleep of trust. So ignorance is the state of not knowing anything and being attracted to the good. But innocence is the state of knowing everything and still being attracted to the good. After the process of untangling the skeleton is done, then the lover may return to the state of innocence, and sleep is the representation of innocence. In the book it says, though an initial return to this state may require scraping away of years of jaded viewpoints, decades of callous and carefully constructed bulwarking, once one has returned, one never has to pry for it, dig for it, ever again. To return to an alert innocence is not so much an effort, like moving a pile of bricks from here to there, as it is standing still long enough to let the spirit find you. It is said that all you are seeking is also seeking you, that if you lie still, sit still, it will find you. It has been waiting for you for a long time. Once it is here, don't move away. Rest. See what happens next. To be innocent is not the same as being naive. To be innocent means to be able to heal hurt and pain within yourself and to try not to give hurt or pain to someone else. To do this, to heal others and heal yourself and to be an innocent, you must be able to clearly identify and see where pain and hurt lies, and to be able to mend it yourself. To be in an innocent sleep is to trust the spirit, to trust the life-death-life cycles to do what they need to do to take care of everything. It's hard to turn off our hurt ego. It projects signals of danger and pain, and it forces us to want to run away when all our hearts are searching for is really love. But if we can turn it off and simply rest, then we can return to innocence. To return to innocence is actually one of the bravest and most courageous acts that you can commit. To be able to love after the pain and hurt caused to your ego is extremely difficult. And it requires a lot of bravery and a lot of courage. In the book, it says, "Sometimes there are no words to help one's courage. Sometimes you just have to jump. There has to be some point in a man's lifetime when he will trust where love takes him, where he fears more being trapped in some dry, cracked riverbed of the psyche than being out in the lush but uncharted territory. When life is too controlled, there becomes less and less life to control." But finding innocence is not completely foreign to men, and I don't want it to seem like it's all about men either. It's just, normally it's a little harder for men, but it's actually intrinsically a part of their own souls and their own spirit. It's just normally turned into different frequencies. Within the masculine psyche, there is a creature, an unwounded man who believes in the good, who has no doubts about life, who is not only wise, but who also is not afraid to die. Some would identify this as a warrior self, but it is not that. It is a spirit self, a young spirit at that, one who, regardless of being tormented, wounded, and exiled, continues to love, but it is in its own way self-healing and self-mending. Women will testify to seeing this creature lurking in a man outside of his awareness. This young spirit's ability to bring the power of healing to bear on his own psyche is so awesome that it is astounding. His trust is not dependent on his lover to not hurt him. His is a trust that any wound that comes to him can be healed, a trust that new life follows old, a trust that there is a deeper meaning in all these things, that seemingly petty events are not without meaning, that all things in one's life, the ragged, the jagged, and the lilting and soaring, all can be used as life's energy. This exists in all of us. I don't think it's just a man thing. I think a lot of us deal with this fear of believing that pain is consistent or that bad things happen to us against us. But there exists within us the spirit that knows all that is happening is for us, not happening to us. But the key, I guess, feminine force that makes this less of a masculine trait is that the way to exhibit bravery in this way is a forceful sleep. It's not to force anything. It's not to go out and change anything. It's not to go out and fix the problem. It's a sleep of trust. And it's a serious leap against the normal thought process and the normal frequency. It takes a lot of courage, but you have to take the leap before you even have the courage, because the courage won't even be found until you're halfway in the air anyways. The fifth step of the phases of love is giving the tear. This is after one has gone to the depths of the life-death-life cycle, one has untangled the skeleton, and is now sleeping in trust. There is a tear that falls, which is of passion and compassion. In the book, it says, "The tear of the dreamer comes when a lover-to-be allows himself to feel and to bind up his own wounds. When he allows himself to see the self-destruction he has wrought by his loss of faith in the goodness of self, when he feels cut away from the nurturing and revivifying cycle of the life-death-life nature. Then he weeps, for he feels his loneliness, his acute homesickness for the psychic place, for that wild knowing." These are the tears of a man creating life. A man cannot birth life, so he cries tears. These are the tears of knowing what love is and knowing how to do it. To love another is not enough. To be not an impediment in the life of another is not enough. It is not enough to be supportive and there for them and all the rest. The goal is to be knowledgeable about the ways of life and death in one's own life and in panorama. And the only way to be a knowing man is to go to the school in the bones of the skeleton woman. She is waiting for the signal of deep feeling, the one tear that says, "I admit the wound." This admission feeds the life of the life-death-life nature, causes the bond to be made and the deep knowing in a man to begin. We all have made the mistake of thinking someone else can be our healer, our thriller, our filling. It takes a long time to find out that it is not so, mostly because we project the wound outside of ourselves instead of ministering it to it within. There is probably nothing a woman wants more from a man than for him to dissolve his projections and face his own wound. When a man faces his wound, the tears come naturally, and his loyalties within and without are made clearer and stronger. He becomes his own healer. He is no longer lonely for the deeper self. He no longer applies to women to be his anesthetic. Many men or people coming from this thought process and feeling who aren't in touch with their feminine side, it's the best way I can describe it, have lived this way for so long and so broken that they don't even know that it's the case. When the tear comes, it breaks the shackles of love. The book says, the internal feeling of tenderness that moves the fisherman to untangle skeleton woman also allows him to feel other forgotten longings, to resurrect his self-compassion. Because he is in a state of innocence, that is, thinking all things are possible, he is unafraid to say his soul's desires. He is unafraid to wish, for he believes his needs will be met. It is a great relief for him to believe his soul will be fulfilled. When the fisherman cries his true feeling, the reunion with the life-death-life nature is furthered. This tear is only the beginning of the vast ocean of love to come. The sixth phase of love is the heart as a drum and singing up. The skin or the body of a drum is kind of what makes its target. It determines who can hear its call. Because the drum in the story was the heart of the fisherman, the drum of the heart, as our most vital organ, is symbolically representative of our love. In the book it says, the story contains this promise. Allow Skeleton Woman to become more palpable in your life, and she will make your life larger in return. When you free her from her tangled and misunderstood state, and realize her both as teacher and lover, she becomes ally and partner. Giving one's heart for new creation, for new life, for the forces of the life-death-life nature, is a descent into the feeling realm. It may be difficult for us, especially if we have been wounded by disappointment or by sorrow, but it is meant to be drummed through, to bring to full life the skeleton woman, to come close to the one who has always been close to us. The man is now bonded to the life-death-life nature. He's able to express himself through his femininity and push through the masculine milieu. So the man's bond with the life-death-life nature will eventually give him ideas by the dozens, and life plots and situations and musical scores and colors and images without peril. For the life-death-life nature, as related to the wild woman archetype, has at its disposal all that has ever was and all that will ever be. When skeleton woman creates, sings flesh unto herself, and the person whose heart she uses feels it, is filled with the creation themselves, bursts with it, and brims over from it. The song that she sings while beating the heart drum is like a hymnal to God. It creates movement, and it creates dancing, and it creates everything. It's like a rebirth. It's like a birth in itself. We don't know what is to come, but we know whatever it is will come out of truth and will be beautiful because of it. The final phase of love, the seventh phase, the dance of body and soul. As women, whether we're conscious of it or not, we're constantly from birth connected to the life-death-life cycle. Even by the mere factor of our menstruals and the filling and depleting of them and the connotations to life and death based on our lives in general, that may be the reason why, for whatever reason, women are consistently connected to the life-death-life cycle, whether we want to admit it or not. And we're connected to it through our physical bodies, whether our minds want to talk about it or follow the steps. Our bodies know the life-death-life cycle. Love in its fullest form is a series of deaths and rebirths. We let go of one phase, one aspect of love, and enter another. Passion dies and is brought back. Pain is chased away and surfaces another time. To love means to embrace, and at the same time to withstand many, many endings and many, many beginnings, all at the same relationship. We understand this truth, but all too often, we still only know how to love, not quite how to make love. In the book, it says, to make love, if we are to love, we can dance with death. There will be flowing, there will be draining. There will be live birth and stillbirth, and yet born again birth of something new. To love is to learn the steps. To make love is to dance the dance. Energy, feeling, closeness, solitude, desire, all rise and fall in relatively closely packed cycles. One's desire for nearness and for separations waxes and wanes. The life-death-life nature not only teaches us to dance these, but teaches us that the solution for malaise is always the opposite. So new action is the cure for boredom. Closeness is the cure for loneliness. Solitude is the cure for feeling cramped. Because we often don't know how to actually dance the dance and how to actually make love, we often find other ways to placate our needs, such as spending too much money or rebounding with someone or posting things in order to get fulfillment from likes and comments or whatever on the gram. In the book it says, at first we think we can outrun the death aspect of the life-death-life nature. The fact is that we cannot. It follows right along behind us, bumpity-bump, thumpity-thump, right into our houses, right into consciousness. If in no other way, we learn of this darker nature when we concede that the world is not a fair place, that chances are lost, that opportunities come to us unbidden, and that the life-death-life cycle prevails whether we wish them to or not. Yet, if we live as we breathe, take in and let go, we cannot go wrong. In a period of singleness, when we haven't learned the dance of making love and we've successfully run from the skeleton woman, at least for a little while, this is when we choose to use other things to placate our needs, and that is a clear sign of not knowing how the life-death-life cycles work and not being able to just go with them. In the book, it talks about how the skeleton woman's transformation is a lot different than what the fisherman goes through. Skeleton woman's transformations take a slightly different trajectory. First, as the life-death-life nature, she is used to having her relationships with humans end right after the initial hooking. It is no wonder she heaps so many blessings on those who will go the distance with her, for she is used to having humans cut bait and dash for land. First, she is thrown away and exiled. Then, she is accidentally caught by someone who is afraid of her. She begins to return to life from an inert state. She eats, she drinks from him who has raised her up. She transforms herself by the strength of his heart and by his strength to face her and himself. She is transformed by being a skeleton into living being. She is loved by him and he by her. She empowers him and he empowers her. She, who is the great wheel of nature, and he, the human being, now live in harmony with one another. We see in the story what death requires of love. It requires to tear its feeling and its heart. It requires to be made love to. The life-death-life nature requires of lovers that they face this nature straight on, that they neither faint nor faint from her, that their commitment to one another is far more than being together, that their love is based on the combined learning and strength to meet this nature, to love this nature, to dance with this nature together. This is how the skeleton woman sang her body back into existence, back into human form. She sang a body that's useful for all points of the life, death, life cycle. She sang a body that was useful to all points of the life, death, life cycle. She sang a body to be made love to and to make love with. We see from the story that the giving of the body is one of the last in the phases of love. This is as it should be. It is good to master the first stages of meeting with the life, death, life nature and let the literal body-to-body experiences come after. I caution women, do not engage a lover who wants to go from accidental catching to giving body. Insist on all the phases. Then the last phase will take care of itself. The time of body union will come in its own right time. When the union is begun in the body phase, the process of facing the life, death, life nature can still be accomplished later, but it just takes more resolve. It's harder work, for the pleasure ego must be dragged away from its carnal interests so that the foundation work can be done. The little dog in the Manawi story points out just how hard it is to remember what path one is on when one's nerves are being thrummed by delight. So, to make love is to merge the breath and the flesh, spirit and matter. One fits into the other. In this tale, there is a mating of the mortal and immortal. And this too is true in a love relationship that will last. There is an immortal soul-to-soul connection that we have little ability to describe, or perhaps even to decide, but that we experience deeply. Basically, she's talking about sex. There's never anything wrong with being sex positive. That's just 100%. But as far as the conversation of, slut shaming or just like having sex before marriage or whatever, and virginity and all of that conversation, the key to finding love and finding long-lasting love, you should actually wait. And I think that it's important to actually wait. I have not always been one to do that, and I think a lot of people aren't. And you can make it happen without it, but the key is recognizing what happens when you don't. Sex fulfills the ego. If you have sex before you go into the place where the skeleton woman comes out, the ugly parts of the relationship come out, it's very easy to feel just fulfilled by the bodily pleasures and really think that, you've got all that you need, so just move on with your life. That comes from both parties, either the man or the woman. Sorry about that, that was outside. But it's a very easy thing to do, to just move on after the body-to-body connection has happened once the ugly part comes in, because not everyone wants to deal with each other's ugly parts. But if you wait and you fully know each other, if you fully untangled 200 bones of each other together and understood each other's life, death, life cycles and accepted that and come to the sleep of trust and all of that, that's a cycle that honestly you don't want to go through with everybody. So at that point, you're a lot more just likely and just connected to the person, and it's like you have skin in the game. So the final section in the book that I want to share with you guys says, so in the end, in the fleshing out of herself, the skeleton woman enacts the entire creation process. But rather than beginning as a baby in the way Westerners are taught to think about life and death, she begins as ancient bones and fleshes out her life from there. She teaches the man to make new life. She shows him that the way of the heart is the way of creation. She shows him that creation is a series of births and deaths. She teaches that protectionism creates nothing. Selfishness creates nothing. Holding on and screaming affects nothing. Only letting go, giving heart, the great drum, the great instrument of the wild nature, only this creates. This is how love relationship is meant to work, each partner transforming the other. The strength and power of each is untangled and shared. He gives her the heart drum. She gives him knowledge of the most complicated rhythms and emotions imaginable. Who knows what they will hunt together? We only know that they will be nourished to the ends of their days. The tale teaches us how to love, but even more than that, it teaches us how to conquer anything that is feared. We cannot conquer anything that is feared without love. No amount of force or power will overcome anything in life. You will only overcome fear when you are able to love past it. So this chapter hit me pretty hard for, I feel like, obvious reasons. I want to be real with you guys, but I obviously don't want to, betray anyone's privacy or anything like that. And basically, something that I'm learning a lot is that I think, like, in society, long-term relationships aren't valued so much in society, like true long-term relationships, because it's like one or the other, that if you're in a long-term relationship, you should just compromise everything and continue to be with someone regardless of anything, or if you don't believe in it, you should just leave at the first sign of like scariness or the first sign of issues and just go. I think that there has to be a middle ground in that, because humans aren't perfect and we have to be able to allow each other to grow and come to agreement and work on ourselves. But it's important in that to follow your own truth and to go through all of the stages, just like this chapter said. I think one of the most important things is recognizing that you have to go through the whole stages. Like, you have to take the time to run away and think and be afraid. You have to take the time to come back and untangle all of the bones and understand, not try to change anything, not try to fix anything, just simply understand. I think that that is more important than anything. I just want to say to anyone who may be going through a tough time where you're not sure what to do because you do truly love someone, but you're just maybe making decisions that don't show your love, or maybe they're showing sides that make you afraid of being in love with them. I encourage you to feel your own truth, to look deeper, and to just be genuine, to be accepting and understanding of others' downfalls, but at the same time, don't ever compromise for what you really need. And hopefully, all of us will find our ways to true, genuine, good love. So that's the end of the book, or not the book, but that's the end of the chapter. I'll be doing chapter 6 very soon. I have been talking about this forever, but if you did get to the end of the video, still thinking about doing this as a podcast, yeah, I finally got an app that I could do it with, so I think that we might actually end up doing that, and I think that we might make the YouTube videos a little shorter, and then I'll lead you guys into the podcast. So that might be how chapter 6 works. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Still trying to get the Facebook group to work. Hopefully I'll get it working by chapter 6. Make sure that you've subscribed to my channel and liked this video if you liked it. Make sure that you like it if you want to see more videos like this, because these are like my most popular videos, but then also my least popular videos because they're so long, so I never know if people are really enjoying seeing this, to be quite honest. I love you guys very, very much, and I will see you next time. Bye!